"We don't need junior input," my supervisor announced, cutting me off mid-sentence. So I wrote a simple note and slid it across to the client. They read it, stood up, and said, "Meeting adjourned." Their faces went white when they realized what I'd done. "Welcome to cheat sheet tales where loyalty dies, lies bleed out, and the truth hits like a slap to the face. These aren't just stories. They're confessions soaked in betrayal and regret." Ever spotted a red flag when it was already too late? Say it in the comments. Let's tear into today's tale. "We don't need junior input," Corbin announced, cutting me off mid-sentence. His voice echoed across the gleaming conference table where 12 executives sat, watching my humiliation unfold. 3 months of research vanished into thin air as he clicked. To the next slide. My cheeks burned not from embarrassment, but from rage. 7 months at this firm, countless nights sacrificing sleep, relationships, and sanity to perfect this presentation, all for him to dismiss me like background noise. The client representative shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. As Corbin continued presenting projections I knew were catastrophically flawed, the Eastern Regional Tax Amendment would destroy everything he was promising. As he boasted about 30% growth with a earned confidence. I pulled out my notepad. 2 lines, that's all it would take. I slid the folded paper across to Leora, the lead client representative. She read it, checked something on her tablet, then stood abruptly. "Meeting adjourned," she announced. "Before I continue, I need you to understand something important. What I'm about to share isn't just a story of workplace revenge. It's about what happens when talented people are systematically silenced. Listen until the end, because what I did next changed not just my career, but transformed an entire company culture that had been suffocating innovation for years. My name is Sienna Voss. At 28, I was the youngest financial analyst ever hired at Waterstone Consulting, with degrees in economics and data science. I'd turned down offers from 3 top firms because Waterstone promised a meritocracy where ideas mattered more than seniority. That promise evaporated during my first week. I'm naturally observant. My grandmother called it having third eye vision for problems others missed. I noticed patterns, discrepancies, and opportunities that hovered just beyond most people's awareness. This talent made me an excellent analyst, but a target for those threatened by competence they couldn't control. The trouble started exactly 7 months before that fateful meeting. During routine compliance checks, I discovered a regulatory blind spot in our accounting methodology that could have triggered federal penalties. Nothing criminal, just an oversight in how contingent liabilities were being calculated across international accounts. Simple fix, potentially catastrophic if ignored. I drafted a detailed report with correction protocols and hand-delivered it to Corbin, my direct supervisor. His response? A cursory nod, and "I'll look into it." 3 days later, all accounting teams received an urgent directive to implement new compliance measures. The memo came from Corbin, word for word from my report, with his signature at the bottom. The monthly all-hands meeting. The CEO personally thanked Corbin for his exceptional vigilance in protecting company interests. Corbin received a $15,000 performance bonus. I received nothing, not even acknowledgement that the discovery had been mine. "That's how things work here," whispered Talia, the only colleague who'd befriended me. "Documentation is worthless unless your name carries weight." I convinced myself it was a one-time occurrence. Perhaps Corbin meant to mention my contribution but forgot in the rush to implement changes. I doubled my efforts, arriving at 6:30 each morning to analyze market trends before meetings, staying until security did their final rounds at night. 3 months into my tenure, I identified a sustainability issue in our supply chain approach that was creating a necessary vulnerability for clients. Environmental regulations were shifting across European markets, and our strategy left clients exposed to compliance gaps that would emerge within 18 months. Again, I prepared a comprehensive analysis with alternative approaches. This time, I submitted it through official channels, uploading to the shared project drive with proper attribution and sending notification emails to the entire strategy team. 2 days later, my report disappeared from the company archives. Server maintenance, they claimed when I inquired. Some files were temporarily misplaced. 1 week later, Corbin led a presentation to senior leadership about emerging sustainability considerations in our approach. My entire analysis appeared slide by slide, graph by graph, with my name erased from every attribution line. When questions arose about methodology, Corbin smoothly explained the analytical process I had developed, as if it were his brainchild. The next day, his office moved to the corner suite with windows overlooking the harbor. I confronted him privately, voice shaking. Despite my rehearsed composure, I would appreciate acknowledgement for my sustainability analysis, I said, standing in his doorway while he admired his new view. Corbin swiveled his chair slowly. Acknowledgement? Waterstone is a collaborative environment, Sienna. No single person owns ideas here. They belong to the team. Besides, your initial draft needed significant refinement before presentation. Consider this a learning opportunity in how to properly position findings. The refinement he mentioned? Changing the font and adding his logo to the header each week brought new variations of the same pattern. In team meetings, I'd begin explaining an insight only to have Corbin interrupt. Let's circle back to that later. Later never came. Or he'd redirect. We need to focus on primary concerns now. My concerns never made the priority list. When clients were present, the dynamic worsened. If I spoke, Corbin would subtly shake his head, signaling disapproval, undermining my credibility before I could establish it. After 5 months, the weight of invisibility followed me everywhere. I'd stare at myself in bathroom mirrors, checking if I was still physically present. I'd speak deliberately louder in meetings, only to watch attention slide past me like water off glass. My confidence eroded. I began second-guessing analyses that once came naturally. Sleep became elusive. My grandmother, who had raised me with stories of her own battles in male-dominated academia, noticed the change during our weekly calls. You sound hollow, little bird, she said one Sunday evening. Remember what I taught you. Those who silence others fear what might be heard. Her words stirred something in me. The following morning, I started documenting everything, keeping meticulous records of my contributions, timestamps of file submissions, and notes from every interaction with Corbin. I began basing myself on all communications and saving offline copies of my work. I wasn't planning revenge yet, just creating accountability where institutional structures provided none. The quarterly strategy meeting with Elmstead Industries represented Waterstone's biggest opportunity that year. Elmstead was considering consolidating their consulting services, and our presentation would determine whether we secured exclusive rights to their business across North America, a $30 million contract minimum. For 3 months, our team prepared. I was assigned to analyze market inefficiencies that might impact growth projections. Corbin made it clear this was my chance to prove my value to the firm. I threw myself into the research, identifying a crucial regulatory development, the Eastern Regional Tax Amendment, that would fundamentally alter the profitability equation for service providers in Elmstead's sector. This wasn't public knowledge yet. I discovered it through painstaking analysis of legislative committee transcripts and regulatory drafts. The amendment would invalidate our entire growth strategy unless we restructured our approach. I prepared an alternative framework that would not only protect Elmstead from the tax impact, but potentially leverage it for competitive advantage. The night before the presentation, I submitted my findings to Corbin. His response came at 11:43 p.m. Received. We'll review before meeting. As I entered the conference room the next morning, Corbin avoided eye contact. The presentation deck loaded on the main screen didn't include any of my tax amendment findings. When I tried to speak, Corbin cut me off mid-sentence. We don't need junior input, he announced, his tone sharp enough to slice through the tension in the room. My breath caught. Every eye shifted toward me. 12 executives, their faces unreadable, watching my humiliation unfold. The next slide clicked onto the screen. 3 months of research gone, erased, as if I'd never existed. I clenched my pen, my knuckles white. Not embarrassment, not shame, rage. 7 months at this firm, hundreds of hours, sleepless nights, missed calls from friends, a breakup I never mended, all for this moment, for my work to be dismissed like background noise. The client representative shifted uncomfortably. One cleared his throat, another fiddled with his pen. No one willing to meet my eyes. Corbin kept talking, projecting a confidence he hadn't earned. 30% growth, he said, his voice booming, as if volume could make his lies true. But I knew better. I knew the Eastern Regional Tax Amendment would obliterate those projections. Everything he was promising, it was smoke and mirrors. I opened my notepad. 2 lines, that's all I needed. I scribbled them quickly, folded the page, and slid it across the table toward Leora, the lead client representative. She read it, paused, checked something on her tablet. Then she stood abruptly. Meeting adjourned, Leora said, her tone ice cold. The room froze. Chair squeaked, someone coughed nervously, and then silence. Before I continue, I need you to understand something important. What I'm about to share isn't just a story of workplace revenge. It's about what happens when talented people are systematically silenced. Listen until the end because what I did next didn't just change my career. It transformed an entire company culture that had been suffocating innovation for years. My name is Sienna Voss. At T28. I was the youngest financial analyst ever hired at Waterstone Consulting, with dual degrees in economics and data science. I'd turned down offers from 3 top firms because Waterstone promised something rare, a meritocracy where ideas mattered more than seniority. That promise, it evaporated in my first week. I'm naturally observant. My grandmother called it having third eye vision, the ability to see problems others missed, patterns, discrepancies, opportunities hovering just outside most people's awareness. This talent made me an excellent analyst, but it also made me a target, especially to those who couldn't control me. The trouble started 7 months before that fateful meeting. During a routine compliance check, I found a regulatory blind spot in our accounting methodology, a flaw that could have triggered federal penalties. Nothing criminal, just an oversight in how contingent liabilities were being calculated across international accounts. Simple fix, potentially catastrophic if ignored. I drafted a detailed report, complete with correction protocols, and hand-delivered it to Corbin, my direct supervisor. His response? A nod and a lazy, "I'll look into it." 3 days later, an urgent memo was sent to all accounting teams. The new compliance measures word for word from my report. Signed Corbin. At the next all-hands meeting, the CEO thanked Corbin for his exceptional vigilance. He got a $15,000 performance bonus. I got nothing, not even a nod. "That's how things work here," Talia whispered, the only colleague who had dared befriend me. "Documentation is worthless unless your name carries weight." I told myself it was a one-time thing. Maybe Corbin just forgot to mention me. I doubled down. Early mornings at 6:30, late nights until security kicked me out. 3 months in, I spotted a massive sustainability risk in our supply chain strategy, a flaw that would leave clients exposed to European compliance changes within 18 months. Again, I built a full analysis. This time, I uploaded it to the shared project drive with my name on every page and sent a notification email to the entire strategy team. 2 days later, it vanished. Server maintenance, they claimed, a glitch. 1 week later, Corbin gave a presentation to senior leadership. Slide by slide, graph by graph, my entire analysis. My name erased. When questions came up, he handled them smoothly, explaining my own methods back to the executives as if they'd sprung from his head fully formed. The next day, he was moved to the corner office. With a view of the harbor, I confronted him. I'd practiced what to say, but my voice still shook. "I'd appreciate acknowledgement for my sustainability analysis," I said, standing in his doorway while he admired his skyline view. He turned his chair slowly. "Acknowledgement? Sienna, Waterstone is a collaborative environment. No one owns ideas here. They belong to the team. And besides, your draft needed significant refinement before presentation. Consider this a learning opportunity." The refinement he meant? Changing the font, adding his logo. Each week brought new variations of the same pattern. In team meetings, I'd start explaining an insight only to have Corbin interrupt. "Let's circle back to that later." Later never came, or he'd redirect with, "We need to focus on primary concerns now." My concerns never made the list. When clients were present, the dynamic worsened. If I spoke, Corbin would subtly shake his head, a tiny motion, just enough to undercut me, to make them doubt my credibility before I could even prove it. After 5 months, the weight of invisibility followed me everywhere. I'd stare at myself in bathroom mirrors, searching for proof I was still physically there. I started speaking louder in meetings, more deliberate, but attention slid off me like water off glass. My confidence cracked. I began second-guessing analyses that once came easily. Sleep? Elusive. My grandmother, who raised me on stories of her own battles in male-dominated academia, noticed the change during our weekly calls. "You sound hollow, little bird," she said one Sunday evening. "Remember what I taught you. Those who silence others fear what might be heard." Her words stirred something in me. The next morning, I began documenting everything, every report, every timestamp, every file submission. I kept notes from each interaction with Corbin. I started basing myself on all communications, saving offline copies of my work. I wasn't planning revenge yet. I was building accountability in a system that gave me none. The quarterly strategy meeting with Elmstead Industries was Waterstone's biggest opportunity that year. Elmstead was consolidating consulting services. Our presentation would decide if we won an exclusive $30 million contract. For 3 months, our team prepared. Corbin made it clear. This was my chance to prove my value. I dove in, buried myself in research, and I found something critical: the Eastern Regional Tax Amendment, a regulatory shift so severe it would make Corbin's entire growth strategy collapse. But I saw something he didn't, a way to turn it into an advantage. It wasn't public yet. I only found it by combing through legislative transcripts, hidden drafts, committee notes. I built an alternative framework, one that not only protected Elmstead, but could give them a competitive edge. The night before the presentation, I sent everything to Corbin. At 11:43 p.m. he replied, "Received. We'll review before meeting." The next morning, I walked into the conference room. Corbin wouldn't meet my eyes. The deck on the screen? None of my tax amendment findings were there. I opened my mouth to speak and he cut me off, like I didn't exist. I opened my mouth to speak, but Corbin cut me off, his voice sharp and commanding. "We don't need junior input," he declared, dismissing me with a single sentence. The room went silent. Every executive, every client representative, watched as my months of work evaporated on screen. My heart pounded, not with fear, with fury. I'd spent 7 months proving my worth, sacrificing everything: my health, my relationships, my sanity, and he was about to ruin everything with projections I knew were built on lies. The Eastern Regional Tax Amendment would hit like a tidal wave. Corbin's numbers wouldn't just fail, they would burn Elmstead's trust to ashes. And if Elmstead walked, Waterstone would lose millions. I couldn't sit quietly anymore. While he spoke, I grabbed my notepad. 2 lines, that's all it would take. I scribbled them down, folded the page, and slid it across the table to Leora, the lead client representative. "Leora, read it." Her eyes flicked to me, then to her tablet. She tapped the screen, paused, and stood abruptly. "Meeting adjourned," Leora said, her voice slicing through the room like a blade. Corbin blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" She didn't answer him. Her eyes were on me now, on the quiet, invisible junior analyst who had just shifted the balance of power. "Before I continue, you need to understand this moment wasn't just about calling Corbin out. It was the turning point, the crack in the ceiling where light finally bled through. From here, everything I did next, every calculated move, wouldn't just change my career. It would dismantle an entire toxic culture that had been suffocating innovation for years. Leora's voice cut through the tension. "Before we proceed, I need clarity on one thing," she said, her tone calm, but razor sharp. She turned her tablet to face Corbin. "Your projections," she continued, "don't account for the Eastern Regional Tax Amendment." The color drained from Corbin's face. He stammered, "I am not sure what," but Leora wasn't looking at him anymore. She was looking at me. The entire room shifted. The executives leaned forward, eyes darting between me and Corbin. They were waiting. I took a slow breath. 7 months of silence had led to this moment. "That amendment will invalidate these growth models," I said, my voice steady, clear. "I've prepared an alternative framework that mitigates the tax impact and identifies new profit channels for Elmstead." I slid a copy of my notes across the table toward Leora. Her brows lifted as she scanned them. "These numbers hold," she confirmed, glancing at me with something between surprise and admiration. The room erupted. Questions, concerns, executives pointing at charts, clients leaning over the table, suddenly hanging on my every word. "Corbin?" He sat there, frozen, as if someone had yanked the floor out from under him. Leora closed her tablet with a decisive click. "We'll schedule a follow-up session," she said. "But one thing is clear: if Waterstone expects this contract, this woman," she pointed to me, "will lead the analysis team moving forward." The room went silent again, all eyes on me. And for the first time, I didn't feel invisible. Corbin's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He couldn't, because the truth was no longer in his hands. It was in mine. That moment, it was the spark, the beginning of the chain reaction that would burn down everything he thought he controlled. After that meeting, everything shifted. Leora's endorsement gave me visibility I'd never had before. Executives who once looked past me now asked for my input directly. Clients started requesting my analyses by name. And Corbin? He couldn't stop me anymore. I documented everything, every email, every report, every idea he tried to claim. I started forwarding my work to leadership, always under the guise of collaboration, but with time-stamped proof of authorship. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was strategizing. Corbin grew restless. He interrupted me less in meetings, but his silence was worse. I could feel him plotting, trying to find new ways to undercut me. 1 month later, I caught him. A financial forecast I'd prepared for a new client had been altered, numbers inflated, risk factors deleted. The changes made the deal look flawless, but if the client signed, they'd lose millions when the real figures came due. And the edits? They were all traced back to Corbin's account. I didn't confront him this time. I let him present the falsified data. I sat quietly, watching him bury himself with every confident, reckless promise he made. When questions came, I handed the original my report to the client. With every discrepancy I pointed out, Corbin's face drained of color. He couldn't talk his way out of it. Not this time. 2 days later, leadership launched a full audit. Emails were uncovered, proving Corbin had been taking credit for other people's work for years. My name appeared over and over in those threads. Corbin was invited to resign. The corner office he'd stolen, vacant. And me? I was promoted not just in title, but in voice. People listen now. But this isn't a story about a promotion. It's about the cracks I saw in the system, the culture of silencing, the way innovation was suffocated because the wrong people had the loudest voices. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't just going to rise in this company. I was going to change it from the inside out. The months that followed weren't easy. Promotion didn't mean freedom. It meant pressure, all eyes on me, waiting to see if I'd fail. But I wasn't the same woman I'd been 7 months ago. I'd learned how to fight without raising my voice. How to be heard, even in rooms designed to silence me. I started mentoring new analysts, the quiet ones, the ones with sharp eyes and sharper ideas were often ignored. I taught them what my grandmother taught me, that silence can be broken with precision, with facts so undeniable even the loudest voices can't drown them out. One by one, we rebuilt the culture from the ground up. Documentation became standard. Ideas were credited where they belonged, and innovation, real innovation, finally had room to breathe. Corbin? I never saw him again, but I think of him sometimes, not with anger, not even with satisfaction. His downfall wasn't my revenge. It was his own doing. He silenced the wrong person and underestimated the power of someone who refuses to stay invisible. When people ask me what changed, I tell them this: nothing shifts until someone stops waiting for permission to speak. My name is Sienna Voss, and I didn't just survive Waterstone Consulting. I transformed it. Whisper a question. Corbin moved to the opposite side of the room. 12 executives from Elmstead sat alongside Waterstone's senior leadership team. Our CEO made introductions, then turned the floor over to Corbin. He launched into the presentation, highlighting unprecedented growth opportunities, competitive advantages, and profitability projections, all of which would collapse under the pending tax changes. 20 minutes in, during a transition between segments, I raised my hand. Before we continue, there's a critical regulatory factor. That's when Corbin cut me off with those dismissive words. We don't need junior input. Leora read my note about the tax amendment and adjourned the meeting. Corbin's face transformed, the composed, confident facade cracked, revealing confusion, then panic, then fury as understanding dawned. The other executives froze, uncertain what had transpired, but recognizing the seismic shift in the room's dynamics. What amendment? Corbin demanded, voice higher than usual. Leora held up my note. This tax revision apparently changes everything about the approach you've been presenting. Strange that your junior team member knew about it when you didn't. Corbin turned to me, eyes narrowed. This is highly inappropriate. If you had concerns about the presentation, proper channels exist. The same channels where my sustainability report disappeared? I asked quietly. The Waterstone CEO interrupted, face tight with controlled anger. Let's take a 15-minute break, Sienna. Corbin, my office. Leora, would you and your team mind waiting in the client lounge? As everyone filed out, Talia passed behind me, whispering, holy hell, Sienna, if you're still with me, I need you to understand something crucial. This moment wasn't about triumph or vindication. It was terrifying. My heart hammered against my ribs as I followed our CEO down the hallway, aware that I just potentially destroyed my career to protect a client from misinformation. but sometimes integrity demands risking everything you've worked for, especially when systems designed to recognize merit have failed. If you're enjoying this journey so far, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Click the bell icon for notifications, because what happened next transformed not just my position, but the entire power structure at Waterstone. The CEO's office felt unnaturally quiet after the chaos of the boardroom. Celeste Elmsbrook, our CEO for the past 8 years, motioned for us to sit while she remained standing, a power dynamic I'd observed her use only during serious disciplinary discussions. Explain, she demanded. Looking between us, Corbin recovered first. Sienna circumvented protocol and undermined our presentation with unvetted information. This kind of insubordination, the Eastern Regional Tax Amendment passed final committee last week. I interrupted, voice steadier than I felt. It recategorizes knowledge-based consulting services under Section 4.3 of the Commercial Code, imposing a 22% surcharge on cross-border transactions. The projections we presented to Elmstead assumed a 6% tax burden. This amendment would eliminate their profit margin entirely under our proposed structure. Celeste turned to Corbin. Did you review this information before today's meeting? Corbin hesitated. Sienna submitted some speculative findings last night. There wasn't sufficient time to properly validate. I reached into my portfolio and removed a printed email. I identified this issue 3 weeks ago during preliminary research. This is my initial notification to Corbin dated March 5. I handed it to Celeste. I've sent 7 follow-up communications since then with increasing urgency. Corbin's face flushed. Those analyses were inconclusive. And this, I continued, retrieving another document, is my comprehensive amendment impact assessment submitted yesterday, showing exactly how it affects Elmstead's business model. I placed it beside the email. The amendment text is publicly available in legislative records. Validation requires 20 minutes of research. Celeste scanned both documents. Expression hardening. Corbin. He straightened his tie. With respect, Celeste, these regulations pass committee all the time without becoming law. Alarming our clients over speculative tax changes is irresponsible. My judgment was to wait for confirmation before Section 4.3 received executive signature yesterday afternoon. I said quietly. It becomes enforceable July honest. Elmstead's fiscal calendar makes them immediately vulnerable. The CEO's gaze snapped to me. How do you know it received signature? That wouldn't be public yet. My grandmother serves on the Regional Economic Advisory Board. While she doesn't discuss confidential matters with me, their public meeting yesterday included announcement of signature achievements. I verified through official channels this morning before the presentation. Corbin exploded. This is exactly my point. She's using family connections to access information, then presenting it as analysis. Enough. Celeste raised her hand, silencing him. Corbin, wait outside. I need to speak with Sienna alone. After he left, Celeste settled into her chair, studying me with recalibrated attention. 7 months at Waterstone, correct? I nodded. And before that, data analytics at Westford University's Economic Policy Institute. 3 years. She tapped my impact assessment. This is thorough work. Why haven't I seen your name on project submissions before today? The question unlocked something in me, perhaps the realization that nothing could make my position worse than it already was. Because my name gets removed before documents reach your level, I replied. The accounting compliance protocol from my first month, originally my work. The sustainability framework presented last quarter, my analysis. The client retention strategy for Harlow Manufacturing, my research. Celeste's expression revealed nothing. Serious accusations. Miss Voss, I have documentation for everything. Original submissions with metadata. Communication records. Witness statements from team members. She nodded slowly. I suspected something similar was happening within the junior analyst ranks. I didn't realize it had become this systematic. She pressed her intercom. Rena, please ask Leora from Elmstead to join us and have security escort Corbin to HR for processing. My heart stuttered. Processing? We'll discuss that after addressing our client's situation. She studied me again. You placed yourself in significant professional jeopardy today, Sienna. What made you finally take such a risk? I considered carefully before answering. Elmstead would have lost millions implementing our flawed strategy. I couldn't let that happen, regardless of personal consequences, even knowing you might be terminated for insubordination. Integrity isn't conditional on job security. Something shifted in Celeste's expression. Respect perhaps, or recognition. Before she could respond, Leora entered. Miss Layden, Celeste greeted her. I apologize for today's irregularities. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away. Transformation isn't comfortable. I continued. It disrupts established patterns and calengestically held assumptions about who deserves to be heard. But on the other side of that discomfort lies our full potential as an organization. After my speech, as attendees dispersed to breakout sessions, Corbin approached. And months had visibly changed him, the confident swagger replaced by a more measured demeanor. Congratulations on your success, he said stiffly. Thank you. I maintained professional courtesy. The churning in my stomach. He hesitated, clearly struggling with what to say next. I've been reflecting on my leadership approach. There were blind spots in my methods. This wasn't an apology, not really, but perhaps the closest approximation his pride would allow. We all have blind spots, I acknowledged. The difference is whether we're willing to examine them when they're exposed. He nodded curtly and walked away. I watched him go, surprised to find the anger I'd carried had diminished. What remained was something more complex. Understanding of the insecurity that drives suppression. Recognition that systems enable the Corbin Whitneys of the world as much as individual choices create them. The revenge I'd inadvertently executed about destroying one person's career. It was about dismantling structures that protected the powerful at the expense of the valuable. The most profound victory wasn't watching Corbin's downfall. It was witnessing the emergence of voices previously silenced, including my own. 1 year after that fateful meeting, Waterstone's internal metrics revealed the impact of our cultural transformation. Employee retention improved by 37. Innovation benchmarks increased across all departments. Most tellingly, client satisfaction scores reached their highest levels in company history. Celeste called me to her office to discuss the results. The Elmstead contract was just the beginning, she said, showing me the quarterly numbers. Your team's approach has become a case study in how diversity of thought drives business outcomes. It's not just my team, I pointed out. The entire company has embraced more inclusive practices because of the precedent you established. She slid a folder across her desk. Which brings me to this. I'm creating a new position, Chief Innovation Officer. The role will focus on identifying emerging talent and ensuring all voices contribute to our strategic direction. I'd like you to consider it. The offer represented everything I'd fought for, institutional recognition of the value and perspectives from all levels. Yet, something held me back from immediate acceptance. I appreciate the opportunity, I said carefully, but I'd like to propose an alternative structure. Celeste raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Rather than concentrating innovation oversight in one position, create a rotating council drawn from different departments and levels. Each member serves a limited term, ensuring fresh perspectives continuously enter the conversation. She studied me with newfound respect. You're declining a soite promocionando propose a more distributed power structure. I'm suggesting that institutionalizing the voice of any single person, even with the best intentions, recreates the problem in new form. A slow smile spread across her face. Write up the proposal. If it's as thoughtful as I suspect it will be, we'll implement it immediately. 2 weeks later, Waterstone announced the formation of its first Innovation Council. 12 members from across the company representing diverse backgrounds, experiences, and organizational levels. I would chair the inaugural council, helping establish protocols before transitioning leadership to ensure no single voice became dominant. In many ways, this system was my true revenge against the culture of suppression. Not just changing who held power, but transforming how power itself operated within our organization. The morning after the announcement, I arrived early to find a small package on my desk. Inside was an elegant silver pen with an inscription for the words that changed everything. The note accompanying it reads simply, "Thank you for teaching us to listen." I picked up the pen, testing its weight in my hand. Sometimes the most powerful act isn't speaking louder. It's finding precisely the right words at exactly the right moment, then having the courage to ensure they're heard. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to know why. Have you ever been silenced in a professional setting? Did you find a way to make your voice heard? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might give someone else the courage to speak up when it matters most. And if you want more stories about transforming workplace dynamics through small acts of courage, subscribe to this channel. and hit the notification bell. Remember, change doesn't always require grand gestures. Sometimes all it takes is a simple note passed at exactly the right momento completely rewrite the ending.